Hello guys, today we're going to be replacing the front left strut and spring assembly on my 2001 Volkswagen Golf. So I was on my way home from work and I heard some noise up front here. I didn't know what it was, and then something fell off. But if you could look up here, the front top of the spring actually cracked off. And it fell off when I was going about 30 miles an hour, so it wasn't too bad, but I knew something fell off. So I came home, looked around, and noticed that this didn't look right. And these are Suplex brand springs, and they're only about 3.5 years old, so I'm not too pleased with this. So get back on the road, I went to the local auto parts store and purchased a quick strut. So it comes all assembled. All you need to do is install it right in. You don't need the spring compression tool. This just simply goes right up in place here. So it says here, there's the part number. It says assembled in the USA, but if you look at the strut itself, it says assembled in Mexico, so who knows where it was assembled at. I've used these before in a Honda Accord. They're nice and quick and easy. They're okay. But for long-term use, I'd say if you want something better, go with a Kano or Bilstein, something like that. But yeah, this here is not good. So, because when I turn the wheel, I can hear it rubbing and whatnot. So you can see the difference on the passenger side here. See the top there, it's still intact. Okay, I have the wheel off, the vehicle's jacked up, safely supported. Make sure that it's supported very safely before you start to work on this. So, first thing I did is sprayed this up here because this strut will separate from this point here, and we need to disconnect the sensors, the ABS sensor, the brake wear sensor, and these simply just slide off here. Okay, and then you need to remove this screw here. That's a T25 torque screw, and I also sprayed this bolt up too, because we need to loosen this up next after we get this wiring disconnected. Okay, I have the screw removed, so simply wiggle this off of the strut and carefully remove it from this wire. Actually, you might not even need to do that. Just pull it away here. I got this removed here and this removed up here, so that's free now. Now we can go ahead and remove this bolt in the back. Alright, time to remove this nut here. This is 18mm, so I'm using a deep well socket and a long breaker bar to break this loose. You might have to hold the other side here once you get it loose. That's also 18mm, that bolt head. So go ahead and break this loose. You're probably going to have to hold the head of the bolt with another 18mm socket, like so, so that it does not spin while you're removing the nut from the back side here. Alright, the nut's removed. Now you might have to tap this bolt to remove it. Okay, the bolt's removed. Now to separate the strut here, I'm going to let this soak a little bit more and spray it up. I love using this Aerokroil. It works great. It's a little more expensive, but I really like it a lot. So I'm going to let this soak, get around the back side here real good, and let that sit for a little bit. I'll come back. Alright guys, this is a great little tool to have. This helps separate the steering knuckle from the strut, And here's the part number. It's by metalnerd.com. It's a strut spreader bit. This is it right here. And this end here is either 13 millimeter or 1/2 inch. Either will work. So you need to separate this strut from the steering knuckle here. So there's actually a slot in the back here, if you can see, right there below where the bolt goes. And if you take this end of your spreader bit and insert it in there and then get your socket on the end, you can actually open that up, which will allow you to remove the strut from the knuckle. So I'm going to come over here and show you how this will go. So you take your spreader bit, probably have to tap that in there, there we go. Okay, so that's inserted in that slot there, and then you take your socket or open end wrench even and turn that either way, it does not matter, and this will spread the steering knuckle open and allow you to remove that strut. Okay, I managed to get this freed up here. If you push on it a little bit, it'll move. But you need to remove this end link here. This is 16 millimeter. So just remove this bolt, and then that end link, you can swing it up and out of the way. This gives you more clearance. You need to push this lower control arm down, and then this steering knuckle will drop. You can remove the strut that way. Okay, it's nice if you have another jack to stick it under the control arm here, the lower control arm. That allows you to get this bolt out of here, or else this will just bind and you won't be able to get that bolt out. So once that's out, this is free, and the control arm can now move downward once you apply pressure, and then the steering knuckle will separate from the strut. Alright, I finally got the strut out of the knuckle. So I continued spraying it, and then once you have this removed from the lower control arm, that allows the whole thing to drop down. So I just got a hammer here and slowly tapped on that knuckle there. It's safe to do that right here and over here, and just lightly tap and it will break free. So now we can move up above and loosen the top bolt. Alright, first thing you need to do is remove this plastic dust cap here. Just wiggle it and it'll pop right off. And here's the top nut. Now this, you don't really need a special tool for. I'll show you what I'm going to do. So this is a 7 millimeter hex head, and then that nut is 13/16. So I have this socket here, which works out really well. That fits nice and snug, and this allows you to insert your 7 millimeter hex key, which I got these from Harbor Freight, 7-piece set, and includes these sizes right here, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10 millimeter. So we will be using the 7 millimeter bit. Okay guys, so you take your socket, 13/16 or 21 millimeter, it's the same size. Put that right over top of there, nice and snug. Then your 7 millimeter hex bit here. Insert that right in there. That way you can hold that strut still while you loosen this. If not, if you just try to loosen this, it'll just spin. There's nothing to hold it still. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. There we go. Okay, I'm slowly loosening this nut. Okay, the strut's loose and free, so we can go ahead and remove this. And you could throw this away because I have a new one in the kit. And the strut is just resting here. So we'll go ahead and maneuver it out of here. And you can see the top of the spring where it broke. Looks like it probably got corroded there and just is weak in that area and it broke. That's still pretty sad though for only being 3.5 years old. I don't know if I'll ever buy Suplex again, but yeah, so that's that. The rest of the spring looks okay. Yeah, that could have been bad. So let's look at the top of the tower here. Here you can see where it was rubbing at. Right here. Little section here. And right there. I'm probably going to want to get some paint on that. So yeah, that's unfortunate, but what are you going to do? Things happen. So now I can go ahead and plop this quick strut right up in position. You can see here, that's what it's supposed to look like up top. So as soon as this top piece here snapped off, it just blew right up and past the spring perch here and right up against the strut tower there in the car. So what I did was I sprayed some undercoating up there in those bad areas. I just used this stuff I had laying around. Dries quickly, so I'll let that dry and then I'll go ahead and install that strut. So with the new quick strut, it's a different setup here. So you can't use your 13/16 with the 7mm hex key. You have to use a 22mm socket here, or if you don't have one of those, 7/8 socket will work, like so, and tighten it up that way. So I have it in there. I don't have it real tight yet because you don't want to torque it until everything's assembled and you have the weight of the vehicle resting on the ground. So I'm going to go ahead and line this back up in the knuckle here and start to assemble. Well, unfortunately this quick strut will not work. This end here is too fat to fit in the steering knuckle here. It won't go. I tried for about a half hour and it will not fit. I spread this apart and it still wouldn't go, so I got tired of fooling around with it and I just went ahead and ordered new front springs. They came as a pair, so hopefully that goes okay. And I'm just going to replace the spring on this strut. The strut's still good, it's not leaking, so I'm just going to do that. I should have done that in the first place, but I figured I'd give this quick strut a try to save some time, but it wasn't worth it. So I'm going to return that and then get the springs. Okay, to remove this top strut nut here, do the same thing as before with your 13/16 socket and use the 7mm hex to hold that still while you turn it. Okay, the nut is loose. Now we can remove this piece here, and the bearing came off with it. And this is a good opportunity to check this bearing out. Mine is feels pretty good. It's only 3.5 years old. And then we can remove the spring perch. Now we are ready to install the spring. Okay guys, here are the new springs. They came as a pair. These are MOOG brand coil springs. There's the part number. They're made in USA. And I rented this from Advanced Auto Parts, the strut spring compressor. So I'd like to eventually own one of these things because I do this a lot, but I don't, so I had to loan one. So I'll use that and we'll get these put on the strut. Okay, I'm ready to compress this spring now. Make sure that these are directly across from one another, like so. And we'll go ahead and use this 19mm socket here to go ahead and compress this spring. Okay, I have the spring compressed enough to go ahead and install the seat here and the bearing, and we're ready to go. So remember, these get torqued to 44 foot-pounds. Okay, I have the bearing assembly tightened up here. This nut is tightened to 44 foot-pounds. Now I can go ahead and release these spring compressors. Just be very careful while doing this. Alright guys, the spring strut assembly is now ready to be installed. Everything went well. So it's much better than that stupid quick strut was. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten this up. Not the whole way though, just snug it up. And then once we have everything else connected down here, go lower the car and then torque everything to the correct specs. This nut up here is also 44 foot-pounds. So we'll do that whenever we get everything else together here. Alright guys, I got everything together here. I have all the wiring where it's supposed to go for the ABS and brake pad sensor. I put the bolt in here for the sway bar end link. This gets torqued to 33 foot-pounds. I have the steering knuckle pinch bolt back in. That gets torqued to 44 foot-pounds. You're supposed to replace this bolt. It's a stretch bolt. I recommend that you do. I didn't, just so I can get back on the road here. And I have this cap back on, but this top bolt here gets torqued to 44 foot-pounds. And you have to do that when the vehicle, when the suspension is loaded. You can either do it like I did here with the jack, or actually put the wheel back on the car and lower the car down and torque everything that way, which I've done that before too. That's probably the better way to go. So yeah, thanks for watching guys. Please subscribe and hit that like button. Take care.